An Alabama pastor thought he was doing the right thing when one of his neighbors asked him to take care of their plants while they were out of town. Well, that neighborly task landed Pastor Michael Jennings in jail. Here's how it all went down.
Hey man, how's it going?
Pretty good. What you doing here, man?
Water flower.
Are they saying that, is that your vehicle? It's not?
It's the neighbor's vehicle.
The neighbors?
314, I'll be on 13.
Okay.
Yeah,
You live here?
no, I don't live here.
Okay. They saying that this vehicle is not supposed to be here and you're not supposed to be
Who's
here.
saying that?
They called about it. I don't know who called.
I'm supposed to be here. I'm Pastor Jennings. I live across the street.
You're Pastor Jennings?
Yes, I'm looking out for their house while they gone.
Okay.
Watering their flowers.
Okay. Well, that's cool. Now, do you have like ID and
Oh
all?
no, man. I'm not gonna give you no ID.
Why not?
I ain't did nothing wrong. And did
Well,
nothing
you look,
suspicious.
listen, I'm not saying you do nothing wrong.
Dog, listen,
There's a suspicious person.
Look, I used to be a police officer in Goodwater. Don't come here with that. Okay?
Look, man, don't do this to me.
No.
There's a suspicious person in the yard, and if you're not one to identify yourself,
I don't have to identify myself. It's not a stop and identify state. That guy know me. He came to my store that got broke in. I live right over there across the street. Who called y'all?
that's what we got to figure out. But
Yeah,
first,
who called you?
you
This
live
black
here.
man
He
out
don't
here
live here.
warning his neighbor problem. You think
I'm not
doing
saying
something
nothing
illegal?
about.
You have no right to approach me if I ain't did nothing suspicious or nothing wrong. Told him I'm a pastor. I pastor until I don't want to hear you.
Sir.
You want to lock me up? Lock me up.
Nobody wants to lock
Lock
you
me.
up.
I'm not showing y'all anything. I'm gonna continue to water these
We have a
flowers.
call.
I don't care who called y'all. Lock me up and see what happens. I want you to.
Hey, man, just come here and talk to us.
I'm gonna
What?
go water these back flowers is what I'm gonna do. Who called y'all?
Well, if you would let us talk to you, we can figure stuff out.
You ain't gotta talk.
You know, you're going to catch an obstruction charge if you keep walking away.
You can do whatever you want. Do it. Do it.
We're just trying to talk to you, man. Come here.
313, 314, 5.
I'm 10-4. We got one that's not listening to us. Look, man, let me see your phone. Let me see your phone, dude. Just calm down, okay?
No.
Stop.
I like this.
Okay. We're just trying to talk to you and see.
I don't want to argue with you, okay?
All right, go ahead and do what you
I
gotta
don't
do,
wanna
dog.
arrest you either.
Do what you got to do. Go on and
Okay.
lock me up.
Look, just have a
It's
seat.
already
not
a
locked
lawsuit.
up, you're
It's
just-
already a lawsuit,
Yes,
dog.
sir. Yes, sir.
It's already a
Okay.
lawsuit.
Just have a seat, okay?
Okay? Already a lawsuit.
Pastor Michael Jennings and one of his attorneys, Joi Travis, joins us from Alabama. I am so sorry that you had to experience this and go through this. I mean, you literally just showed up to do a neighborly favor. You were watering their flowers. I don't know how suspicious that can be, but someone thought it was suspicious and called the police. When you were watering the flowers and they first approached you, what was going through your mind?
Well, I kind of knew when he pulled up, he pulled around back instead of pulling in the front. I knew then that it was going to be something to it. He pulled around back, then walked around front as though he was going to sneak up on me or catch me doing something. And he began, the way that he started asking his questions, you know, you supposed to be here, what are you doing here? You know, I think that could have been handled another way, you know.
And what was going through your mind? Because you did state that you were in law enforcement earlier in life. So what was going through your mind? Were you anxious? Were you like,
No,
what
I
were you feeling?
kind of let him know that I knew the law and what he was doing was wrong. He was actually trespassing, and he wanted ID, and I wasn't gonna give him no ID, which I didn't have ID on me. But I know once they get you in the system, you know, they'll put it down as burglary, suspicion of burglary, or something like that, and you're in the system once they get that ID and call it in, whether you're guilty or not.
Now, one of the things I wanted to ask you, you said that you told officers you had a background in law enforcement and that you did not have to produce your identification because you had not committed a crime. So what did they tell you their reasoning was for arresting you? Was it because you wouldn't show them your ID?
Well, if you look at the video, you'll see that after they questioned me and they took me around back, that's when they arrested me. When I went around back, one of the officers came up. They was trying to talk to me. One of the officers came up yelling. And this part, you could probably don't hear it. He came up yelling, telling me, shut up, you talk too much. And once he said that, I said, you don't talk to me like that, boy. I'm a full-grown man. And you can hear Officer Smith saying 10-15, mean go ahead on and arrest. So I don't think it was just about the ID. I think it's also because they got angry because I talked back to them.
Goodness, yeah, because that's definitely a crime for sure. Let's go on ahead and bring our panelists in because I'm sure they have plenty of questions for you. Joining us today, we have Kelly Bethea, JD Communications strategist. We also have Michael Imhotep, the host of American History Network, and we also have Xavier Pope, the host of Suit Up News Owner and the Pope Law Firm. Thank you all for joining us. Let's go on ahead and have Imhotep chime in. Do you have any questions or thoughts on this entire ridiculous situation?
Hey, well, thanks for coming on, Pastor Jennings and attorney. I saw the story that Good Morning America did on this situation yesterday. So, number one, I'm glad that you're still alive. Number one, because in Alabama, this could have gone a different way with all white police officers.
Yes.
In the story that Good Morning America did, they stated that in the state of Alabama, out in public, the police have the right to ask for ID, but on private property, it appears based upon Alabama state law that does not apply. So is that what you were following when you said that you didn't have to give them ID because you were on private property?
Yes, and they was actually trespassing, and I knew they didn't have no right to get my ID at that time, and I already had identified myself. And if they wanted to know who I was, they could just walk across the street. They could have ran my tags or got my ID from my wife. When they asked the neighbor for her ID, the one that actually called the police on me, she
Right,
said
right.
she would not give it. And then she wouldn't give them her last name. So they went and ran her tag to get her ID. Neither did
Okay.
they.
And just one quick follow up because they didn't show that portion here in this video. There was a white female neighbor who called the police. You knew the
Correct.
white female neighbor. She came over and the police automatically took her word for what happened, but didn't take your word for what happened. Okay. In the story from Good Morning America, they said that the police still arrested you even after the white neighbor exonerated you. And then a month later, the charges were dropped. Can you or the attorney explain why did the police still arrest you after the neighbor came over and said, I'm the one that called. I know who he is. He lives across the street. She exonerated me. Can anybody explain that?
Mr. Joy, I would like to explain.
I think that's where this is so egregious, because that is the point. He was exonerated. The young lady said that she made a mistake, that he is a neighbor, and confirmed. There was no probable cause of any type of that there was anyone that was any type of danger. And so this actually is where the irony comes in. This young lady, who is the person who called the police, actually told the police, I made a mistake. But even with that,
Right.
they did not require her to give identification. They took her word for it. And even after she told the police, yes, this is someone that lives here or a neighbor, they still continue to arrest him. That is where the problem lies for us, because they got the confirmation that they needed that Reverend Jennings was not a threat, but yet they still decided to take him to jail and book him and charge him with these charges. Even after that communication, Reverend Jennings, Pastor Jennings' wife, brought his ID, and they still refused to release him or acknowledge that, he is who he was. And we see the first thing in the video, within the first 10 seconds, he says, I'm Pastor Jennings, I stay across the street. That's the question. Why did they continue to press forward with these charges when there was nothing being done and we're on private property? There's no issue here as far as anything that's a crime being committed.
All right,
Thank
let's
you.
go to our next panelist, Xavier.
Pastor Jenkins, my heart goes out to you.
Jennings.
Minding your own business, doing something fine for a neighbor, and you have a neighbor that's not neighborly. Is there any reason why the woman that called the police on you all of a sudden did not recognize you? What was your relationship with her? Is there any reason what would prompt her to do what she did? And then kind of waffle back and forth whether you were, quote unquote, allowed to water the lawn of the neighbor? And then another question as to in terms of why would the police would even assume that if you are not in a vehicle, that you're across the street watering a lawn, that you would even have ID on your person in the first place?
To answer your first question, the neighbor said she looked through the fence and she just seen and heard somebody over there. She could have walked around the side and seen that it was me. But a matter of fact, we didn't have any bad relations. She had invited me to come over to celebrate her son's graduation. They were going to have a little thing, get together in the yard that same week. But she acknowledged that, hey, it's my fault. You know, she didn't walk around and look to see if who I said I was. And the suspicion, I believe their suspicion was that when the officer walked up, that I was getting ready to commit a burglary. And the neighbor had told them that that vehicle didn't belong there. And I don't know how she didn't know that, because they drive that vehicle every day right in front of their house. And I think they were suspicious of me having a vehicle there, that I was committing a burglary. And that's why they kept asking me, if that's your vehicle, it don't belong here. And I didn't know my neighbor's last name. I just knew Mr. Roy and Miss Cunny. So I guess they thought that was suspicious. But
I actually have a question for Attorney Travis. Now, it's stated that after this incident occurred that the charges were dropped. So legally, is that kind of an admittance of them doing something wrong? Is that their way of admitting, yeah, we messed up, so we're dropping this? Can you kind of explain a little bit about that?
Well, of course, that is our interpretation, because how often is someone arrested and then just charges just dismissed and dropped? So it is our assumption that that is an action of them showing that they were wrong. But I think that they knew that this got way out of hand and shouldn't have gone that way. So we do believe that that is an admission of guilt. We have not had any statement or communication from the city or the police officers, the mayor, the chief of police. We have not heard anything from them as far as a response regarding that. So that is our assumption, and that's why we are moving forward with filing a federal lawsuit, because Pastor Jennings' rights were violated.
Kelly, we haven't heard from you. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, so first and foremost, I'm glad that you are alive, Mr. Jennings, because that is a harrowing ordeal. When we hear stories like this, usually the pushback is the shoulda, coulda, wouldas. He should have just given the ID. He should have just done this, should have just done that. Why didn't he comply, et cetera, et cetera. But at the end of the day, you are a former law enforcement officer. You are a pastor. You are minding your business. And it doesn't matter how amenable you are to officers' instructions or not, it always feels like you're in a catch-22. Meanwhile, the person who made the phone call and made the mistake gets off scot-free. So my question to you is, how do you feel about the talks now of possible ramifications for people who make this mistake of calling before doing their due diligence and making sure that the person is supposed to be where they're supposed to be?
well, I think people like that should investigate. And one thing, if people just mind their own business, in a lot of situations, a lot of these things wouldn't arise. And for us complying, it doesn't matter if anybody know the history of Alabama and the greatest civil rights thing in Alabama. It doesn't matter if you do comply. NBC just did a report. 61% of blacks that comply are still disrespected. So it really don't matter if you comply. You can crawl, you can lay down, and you can end up like George Floyd. It don't matter if you comply. They feel like they're in control and they're going to do what they want to do. And I think because of the fact that I talked back, that made them more angry than anything. But they're supposed to be public servants, to serve and to protect.
Attorney Travis, is there anything moving forward? What's next?
Well, of course, we are preparing to draft and file in federal court because this is a blatant violation of our client's constitutional rights. We haven't heard anything back from the city at this point. We have not made communication with them or tried to make contact. But we are just preparing to move forward to try to get justice for Pastor Jennings, because what happened should not have happened. You know, there are a lot of things that could have been done differently. Things like training that could help in these situations that we continue to see day after day that are happening in not just Alabama. Training to police officers. You know, there was a question about holding the neighbor accountable. You know, I'm not sure what can be done as far as that, but there needs to be something done so that we can have people think a little bit harder about just making allegations about things that they don't know about. Pastor Jennings said it perfectly, to just people to keep in keep to themselves. But we are just preparing to amp things up to file this complaint. We've got a lot of response from citizens across the country, you know, that are just really upset with this. So there could potentially be some type of effort to show support for Pastor Jennings in public. And so we are looking towards what that may look like. But at this point, we are just trying to make sure Pastor Jennings is able to cope, because every time this video is played, you know, I'm sure it evokes some type of trauma from the experience of this that did not have to occur. So right now, we are just trying to make sure Pastor Jennings has the stability that he needs so that he can continue to be a resident in his community that helps others, and make sure that this does not happen again in his community or anywhere else.
And Pastor, do you have any fear for your safety? Do you have any concerns that now that you're coming out with this story that you may face some backlash?
Well, not concerning the story coming out, but I had a lot of my friends who are Caucasians come and tell me just be careful, because the city have killed 3 black men. They shot a 14-year-old in the back. They shot another one in the head, and they killed a guy at a gas station. They have killed 3 black men in this city over the past 30 years. So they was letting me know, just be careful, watch your back. They was concerned about me. And when my wife went to visit in Florida, when I was here alone, I started thinking, it was kind of a little bit of a paranoia. I started putting a chair behind my door. I armed myself, because I know that anything can happen. So it makes you think. It gives you a little paranoia.
You know, and it's sad that these kind of cases seem to keep happening. We had a guest on yesterday who spoke about she was just cutting her lawn and she had to deal with some issues of racism. And it goes to show that it makes you question whether you should be nice and do nice things for people, because here it is, you're doing a good deed for someone, literally just watering someone's flowers, and this is the end result. And so it almost makes you feel like, you know, or at least myself wonder, like, should we keep doing nice things for people, because this is what happens, this is how you're rewarded. Again, I'm so sorry that you had to go through this, but I appreciate you joining us and sharing your story.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
When we invest in ourselves, our glow, our vision, our vibe, we all shine. Together, we are black beyond measure.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches! I'm real revolutionary right now.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?